to purchase credits using a Stripe account, and both of them have email addresses. And my agent actually tried to basically, like when you purchase credits, it assigned it using the email address from Stripe to the Google email address. Like there wasn't a persistent user ID that for people. It was trying to match up the email addresses, but you could use different email address for your Stripe and your Google, and basically would not associate the funds. And so this is the kind of thing that these agents still will make mistakes about. Is like, why would you use email addresses to try to cross-correlate the funds? They can be arbitrary. You can use different emails, etc. Like this is such a weird thing to do. So I think people have to be in charge of this spec, this plan. And I actually don't even like the plan mode. I mean, obviously it's very useful, but I think there's something more general here where you have to work with your agent to design a spec that is very detailed. And maybe it's maybe basically the docs, and then get the agents to write them. And you're in charge of the oversight and the top level categories, but the agents are doing a lot of the under the hood. And so I think you're not caring about some of the details. So as an example also with arrays or tensors in neural networks, there's a ton of details between PyTorch and NumPy and all the different like pandas and so on for all the different little API details. And I already forgot about the keep dims versus keep dim, or whether it's dim or axis or reshape or permute or transpose. I don't remember this stuff anymore, right? Because you don't have to. This is the kind of details that are handled by the intern because they have very good recall. But you still have to know, for example, that there's underlying tensor, there's an underlying view, and then you can manipulate view of the same storage, or you can have different storage, which will be less efficient. And so you still have to have an understanding of what this stuff is doing and some of the fundamentals, so that you're not copying memory around unnecessarily and so on. But the details of the APIs are now handed off. So you're in charge of the taste, the engineering, the design, and that it makes sense, and that you're asking for the right things, and that you're saying that, okay, these have to be unique user IDs that we're going to tie everything to. And so you're doing some of the design and development, and the engineers are doing the fill in the blanks. And that's currently kind of like where we are. And I think that's what everyone, of course, is seeing, I think, right now.
Do you think there's a chance that this taste and judgment matters less over time, or will the ceiling just keep rising?
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, I mean, I'm hoping that it improves. I think probably the reason it doesn't improve right now is, again, it's not part of the RL. There's probably no aesthetics cost or reward, or it's not good enough or something like that. I do think that when you actually look at the code, sometimes I get a little bit of a heart attack because it's not like super amazing code necessarily all the time, and it's very bloaty, and there's a lot of copy paste, and there's awkward abstractions that are brittle, and like it works, but it's just really gross. And I do hope that this can improve in future models. A good example also is this, the micro GPT project, where I was trying to simplify LLM training to be as simple as possible. The models hate this; they can't do it. I kept trying to prompt an LLM to simplify more, and it just can't. You feel like you're outside of the RL circuits. It feels like you're obviously, you're pulling teeth. It's not like light speed. So I think, I do think that people still remain in charge of this, but I do think that there's nothing fundamental, again, that's preventing it. It's just the labs haven't done it yet, almost. Yeah.
So I'd love to come back to this idea of jagged forms of intelligence. You wrote a little bit about this with a very thought-provoking piece around animals versus ghosts. And the idea is that we're not building animals, we are summoning ghosts. And these are jagged forms of intelligence that are shaped by data and reward functions, but not by intrinsic motivation or fun or curiosity or empowerment, things that kind of came about via evolution. Why does that framing matter? And what does it actually change about how you build and deploy and evaluate or even trust them?
Yeah, I think the reason I wrote about this is because I'm trying to wrap my head around what these things are, right? Because if you have a good model of what they are or are not, then you're going to be more competent at using them. And I do think that, I don't know if it has, I'm not sure if it actually has like real power. I think it's a little bit of philosophizing. But I do think that, I think it's just coming to terms with the fact that these things are not animal intelligences. Like if you yell at them, they're not going to work better or worse, or it doesn't have any impact. And it's all just kind of like these statistical simulation circuits where the substrate is pre-training, so like statistics. But then there's RL bolting on top, so it kind of like increases the appendages. And maybe it's just kind of like a mindset of what I'm coming into, or what's likely to work or not likely to work, or how to modify it. But I don't know that I have like, here are the 5 obvious outcomes of how to make your system better. It's more just being suspicious of it and figuring it out over time.
That's where it starts. Okay, so you are so deep in working with agents that don't just chat. They have real permissions. They have local context. They actually take action on your behalf. What does the world look like when we all start to live in that world?
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably here are excited about what this native agentic environment looks like, and everything has to be rewritten. Everything is still fundamentally written for humans and has to be moved around. I still use, most of the time when I use different frameworks or libraries or things like that, they still have docs that are fundamentally written for humans. This is my favorite pet peeve. Like, why are people still telling me what to do? Like, I don't want to do anything. What is the thing I should copy paste to my agent? So it's just, every time I'm told, go to this URL or something like that, it's just like, oh, So everyone is, I think, excited about how do we decompose the workloads that need to happen into fundamentally sensors over the world, actuators over the world. How do we make it agent native? Basically describe it to agents first. And then have a lot of automation around, around data structures that are very legible to the LLMs. So I think, I'm hoping that there's a lot of agent-first infrastructure out there, and that, for menu gen, famously, when I wrote I'm not sure how famously, but when I wrote the blog post about menu gen, a lot of the work, or a lot of the trouble, was not even writing the code for MenuGen. It was deploying it in Vercel, because I had to work with all these different services, and I had to string them up, and I had to go to their settings and the menus and configure my DNS, and it was just so annoying. And so that's a good example of, I would hope that MenuGen, that I could give a prompt to an LLM, build MenuGen, and that I didn't have to touch anything, and it's deployed in that same way on the internet. I think that would be a good kind of a test for whether or not a lot of our infrastructure is becoming more and more agent native. And then ultimately, I would say, I do think we're going towards a world where there's agent representation for people and for organizations. And I'll have my agent talk to your agent to figure out some of the details of our meetings or things like that. So I do think that that's roughly where things are going. But I think everyone here is excited about that.
I really like the visual analogy of sensors and actuators. I actually hadn't thought about that. That's super interesting.
Right.
Okay, I think we have to end on a question about education, because you are probably one of the very best in the world at making complex technical concepts simple and deeply thoughtful about how we design education around it. What still remains worth learning deeply when intelligence gets cheap as we move into the next era of AI?
Yeah. There was a tweet that blew my mind recently, and I keep thinking about it like every other day. It was something along the lines of, you can outsource your thinking, but you can't outsource your understanding. And
I think that's really nicely put.
Because I'm still part of the system, and I still have to, somehow information still has to make it into my brain. And I feel like I'm becoming a bottleneck of just even knowing, what are we trying to build? Why is it worth doing? How do I direct my agents and so on? So I do still think that ultimately something has to direct the thinking and the processing and so on. And that's still kind of fundamentally constrained somehow by understanding. And this is one reason I also was very excited about all the LLM knowledge bases, because I feel like that's a way for me to process information. And anytime I see a different projection onto information, I always feel like I gain insight. So it's really just a lot of prompts for me to do synthetic data generation kind of over some fixed data. So I really enjoy, whenever I read an article, I have my, my wiki that's being built up from these articles, and I love asking questions about things, and I think that ultimately these are tools to enhance understanding in a certain way. And this is still kind of like a bit of a bottleneck, because then you can't direct you can't be a